Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. I am Bryson Carver, as always. Welcome to the month of April, which, of course, we're in early April. That means we got baseball on the horizon. That means we got the NBA playoffs in 2 weeks. That means the Final Four is tomorrow night. By the way, that Final Four I will predict at the end of the show. We got Villanova taking on Kansas. We got Duke taking on North Carolina. Two pretty great matchups. I think one's going to be a little bit more comfortable of a win for one team over the other than as opposed to the next game. Going to predict the Final Four at the end of the show. Going to discuss Doc Rivers' comments about James Harden as well. Baker Mayfield, my man, one of my favorite analysts in the business, Chris Collinsworth. He talks about how the Seattle Seahawks would be a perfect fit for Baker Mayfield. I 1,000% disagree, and I'll get to that later in the show. As well as Anthony Davis and LeBron reportedly are going to come back and play tonight for the Lakers against the New Orleans Pelicans. What's a huge game. Every game at this point is huge for the Lakers. Every game at this point is huge for everybody, unless your name is the Houston Rockets or something. But going to talk about that. It does not affect the Lakers' hopes at a playoff run whatsoever. And then also after my leading topic, I'm going to discuss Bobby Wagner. The Rams use a different bank than everybody else, folks. I don't get it. I don't. I'll discuss it. I'll discuss it later. But before I get into Giannis, who just, come on. Blew the whole NBA world away yesterday. I do want to start. We had about 45 minutes ago some breaking news. This is, again, 45 minutes ago, this tweet came out. Adrian Wojnarowski, Woj, number one leading source in the National Basketball Association. He, along with Shams Charania, and I believe Shams has also confirmed this, that LeBron James has announced that this year will be his final year, regardless of the result, with the Los Angeles Lakers. So basically, regardless of how the Lakers season ends, LeBron is going to leave LA, and his preferred trade destination is the Golden State Warriors. Now, for me, this is kind of a shock because we've kind of heard LeBron to the Warriors, rumors for a while now. LeBron, Steph, they played each other in the All-Star game. It's total BS. That the report is total. I try to keep a straight face for as long as possible, but I just want to throw some out here for y'all on this April Fool's Day. That was bad, wasn't it? All right, let's okay. April Fools aside, y'all can hit me with the April Fool's jokes in the comments. Do whatever you want. I deserve it. But let's start with, in all seriousness, last night's game, and more specifically, the outlook of the entire season for one specific player, and that is Giannis Antetokoumnpo, the best player in the National Basketball Association. Been saying this since last year's NBA Finals. So last night, in a game that many hyped up as the game that Giannis could clinch his third MVP, I certainly bought into that hype, considering that the race is so close between Giannis, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic. There's even been some rumblings, hey, let's give Devin Booker some love, and Devin Booker's had a great year. And last night, Giannis said, thank you very much, Embiid, great year. Averaging 30 a game, a double-double. Same with Jokic, having another great season, the reigning MVP, and Devin Booker, what a job he's done, leading the Suns to the best record in basketball, especially in the absence of Chris Paul. Giannis is like, thank you very much. You had your run. This is mine. This is my MVP. And it is. Last night against the Brooklyn Nets, he dropped a grand total last night of 44 points against the Brooklyn Nets. Played unbelievable, out of his mind. Shot 67% from the field. 15 for 19 from the free throw line, 14 rebounds, 6 assists. He hit 1 3, but of course, as we all know, ladies and gentlemen, it was the biggest shot of the basketball game. Bucks down 9. They come back. Giannis, with under 20 seconds left, hits a step back 3 over Nick Claxton, ties the game. So, I guess we can't use the James Harden narrative. Remember James Harden a couple of years ago said, I could average as many points as Giannis averages just running and dunking. Well, he didn't run dunk that, but as if there's no skill to Giannis's game. So, if everybody else could just run dunk, why aren't the other 6'11" players doing that? And so, but what we've seen just in the last 4 days perfectly represents why Giannis Antetokoumnpo is the MVP. And also perfectly represents why he's the best player in basketball. Is there any player currently in the NBA that has more impact on both ends of the floor than Giannis? Both ends. So we can talk about our Defensive Player of the Year candidates. Your Jaren Jacksons. I believe I picked Jaren Jackson to win Defensive Player of the Year back in October. He's probably going to win it, deservedly so, but he's not going to give you what Giannis gives you in the offensive end. Likewise, think about guys like Devin Booker, LeBron James, even Joel Embiid to a certain degree. And Embiid's a good, rim protector, but what's he going to give you when it's all said and done on the defensive end of the floor late in these tight, close games? It ain't going to be what Giannis is going to give you. That I know for a fact. And in both the last two games, the two teams, now I disagree with the narrative that it's these two teams that will challenge Milwaukee for the NBA, for at least to win the Eastern Conference this year and stop them from making another run at a championship. But on Tuesday night, Milwaukee plays Philadelphia. This is in Philadelphia. This is a huge game in terms of the standings because, who can jump the other? And Giannis obviously scores 40 in that game and makes the game-winning block on Joel Embiid. The guy who I said for the last probably month and a half is the MVP. And certainly the race is not completely over, I guess, in terms of we still got 5-6 games left. But come on. That's your MVP. Game-ending block on Joel Embiid Tuesday night on the road. Then he goes on the road to the house of Kevin Durant, who many out there say is better than Giannis. I disagree. And Kyrie Irving, who can now play home games. And Giannis goes out there, dominates the Brooklyn Nets on both ends of the floor. 44 points. Not only does he hit the game-tying three to send it to OT, but in OT, after Kevin Durant hits 3 clutch free throws after getting fouled on a 3-point shot to give the Nets a 1-point lead, 8 seconds left, Mike Budenholzer decides not to call timeout. Let's push it down the floor. Let's not allow them to get a rest and get their defense set. Giannis pushes it, gets fouled by Nick Claxton. Down 1, 2 free throws. Giannis has gotten better at the free throw line, but he's not automatic. He's not, Steph Curry or Kevin Durant going to the line. He can have his demons from time to time, even still now at the line. And what does he do? Swish, swish. And that's all she wrote from the Barclays Center. Of course, Kevin Durant in regulation misses the shot that would have won it. And then in overtime, barely misses the shot that would have won it. So in the house of Kevin Durant, who I love, most gifted scorer of all time, as I've said religiously on this show, Giannis took that game over on both ends of the floor. Keep in mind that, all he's doing this season is averaging 30 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, by the way, for a guy who's 6'11" and has the second best player efficiency rating in the NBA. His team is still in the running for the number 1 seed in a loaded Eastern Conference with Miami, Philadelphia on down. And Boston, who's gotten hot, it's Milwaukee, even with the injuries, even with Chris Middleton, who got the worst flagrant 2 foul I've ever seen. Seriously, that's barely a flagrant 1. That play on Bruce Brown that towards the end of the fourth quarter last night, that was not a flagrant 2. That was ridiculous. So Giannis loses Chris Middleton and still closes the game out because that's what MVPs do. Because we talk about all the time, most valuable player, and I try as much as I possibly can till I'm blue in the face to emphasize the middle letter, V, valuable. Honest question. 30 GMs in the NBA. There's 30 teams, 30 GMs. If given the 4 players, because I will include Devin Booker in this discussion, because I want to give that man his respect. He's played great basketball. 4 MVP finalists, Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, and Devin Booker. How many of those GMs would pick Giannis as the guy that they would start their franchise with? If it's not 30 for 30, they're idiots. Simple as that. Jokic is great. He shouldn't have been the MVP last year, but he's still great. Embiid is the best big in basketball, in my opinion. Devin Booker is probably the best 2 guard in basketball. they're not in this man's level. They don't impact the game. I mean, think about last year in the finals, and we're seeing it this year in the regular season. The big plays, the freakish blocks. He is called the Greek Freak for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. Freakish plays on the defensive end of the floor. And offensively, getting buckets at will. What are you going to do to stop him? 6'11", what are we going to give him? 280, maybe? I mean, we think about LeBron and the size that he was at his prime. Giannis is probably that, if not maybe even a little stronger. And so when we talk about the most valuable player, I genuinely don't know how you could give it to anybody else but Giannis. Now, again, we do have, how many games Milwaukee got left? Let's see. They've got 6 games to go. About 6 games to go. So, yeah. Or 4. Yeah, 6 games to go for the Bucks the rest of the season. About the same number for the rest of the NBA. I just can't see anything that Giannis can do to give up the MVP, because at this point, that's what he would have to do, because he's in the driver's seat now. And in terms of being the best player in the NBA, I think that's a whole different discussion that I will get into right now. Because I think there's a lot of guys that people throw in the conversation as the best player in basketball. Okay, is it Giannis? Is it, there's still, it's not as big as it used to be. There's still a small population that say, is LeBron still the best player? Is KD the best player? I've made the arguments from time to time. Certainly last year, I thought there were cases in which Steph Curry was the best player in the National Basketball Association. A couple of years ago, there was sort of a movement to say Kawhi is the best player in the NBA. Now, I would say, obviously, in terms of both sides of the floor, affecting both sides of the floor, Kawhi, out of those 5 that I mentioned, is the closest to Giannis. But Kawhi is more brittle than Giannis, gets hurt way more than Giannis. Giannis is one of the most durable players in the league. So, you don't know. I mean, you have the low managing, obviously. When Kawhi's on the floor, you know what you're getting, especially in the playoffs. Kawhi don't get enough credit for how great he is in the playoffs. He elevates his game in the postseason. But is he going to be there? The Clippers season could be, toast if Kawhi doesn't come back, because towards ACL last year on a non-contact play. His body is not, or isn't as well built as Giannis to take the punishment of an 82-game season. LeBron, who was the best player in the NBA for about 10, 12, probably 15 years or so. But he's not in that level anymore. He can't impact the game still defensively. And he could score at will. We know that. But not the same rate that Giannis can. At least as efficiently as Giannis can. And that's not a knock at LeBron. He's 37 years old and you're 19. It's the fact that there is actually still a group that says LeBron's the best player speaks to how great LeBron still is. So this isn't to poo-poo on LeBron. And then there's KD. Now, KD is a tricky one, because you got the 2 finals MVPs. Giannis doesn't have that quite yet. But Giannis has more regular season MVPs than KD, and he's got a Defensive Player of the Year, which KD does not. Like, KD is the greatest scorer that I've ever seen. The most gifted scorer, at the very least, that I've ever seen. But, again, 30 GMs, Giannis, KD, right now. I'm going to take the guy, and I love KD. Love him, especially as a Warriors fan. But I'm going to take the guy who had Chris Middleton, who's an all-star, as the second best player and went and won the championship, over the guy who had, timeout. He had who as his second best teammate? Steph Curry, who's pushing to be a top 10 all-time player. I like Chris Middleton a lot. Nobody will ever mistake him as a top 15, 20 player in the history of the game. Love Middleton. He's not Steph. Not even sure he's Clay in Clay's prime. He's better than Clay now, but not in Clay's prime. So, and then there's Steph, obviously, which is a real tough one, because legacy-wise, Steph is above Giannis, although I will say Giannis absolutely has a shot to catch Steph with the championship this year. But when you think about the impact on the game in terms of shooting, in terms of, obviously, he cannot even give you close to what Giannis can give you on the defensive end. But in terms of the demoralizing opponents with dagger shots, Steph can do that, which LeBron, Kawhi, KD can't. Giannis isn't going to demoralize you the same way that Steph is offensively, but he can still score at will. And he obviously gives you more on the defensive end. So again, I will reiterate, I think the ranking goes Giannis, who's the clear best player in basketball. Steph 2. You've seen the Warriors without Steph? I have. They're 1-7. Okay, I'm a Warriors fan. This has been a rough stretch with Steph down, and reports are he's going to be ready for the playoffs, so thank God. But I'm going to go Giannis, Steph, KD. I would probably go with Embiid after that, and probably LeBron. Probably LeBron barely breaks into that top 5. And then Kawhi 6 or so. So that's where it's at. But I don't know of an argument you can make, and I'm going to check the comments just a second, see if anybody does have an argument. But I don't know an argument that can be made that guy in Milwaukee isn't the best player. I really don't. And what's scary, folks, he's 27. He's 27. He's not going to be 28 until the middle of next season. I'm not even sure he's in his prime yet. That's what's scary. He's averaging 30 a game. 12 rebounds. We saw what he did in the finals last year, averaging 35, closing it out with a 50-point game, one of the greatest closeout performances in NBA history, in sports history. And he's getting better. Look out, NBA. Third MVP should be going to the doorstep of Giannis Antetokoumnpo. Got a few comments here. My man Phillips in the comments. He says, I was about to say, don't make another super team with LeBron and Curry. Dang, you got me. He asked, what do you think LeBron will do next season? I think he stays in LA. I think that the Lakers, I discussed this a little bit on Monday's show. I think pretty much everybody except LeBron and Malik Monk, everybody else is tradable. Westbrook, that's an obvious one. I don't know who on earth would take his contract. My guess, I would not be shocked in the slightest if OKC's like, look, we're not contending for anything. Let's bring him back. One last go round. It'll be good for the fans. Sell some tickets. Let's bring Russell back. Anthony Davis, I've argued, and I'm going to discuss AD later in the show. You got to trade him. I gave him the nickname last season. AD, always down. He's always down. I mean, how many times are we gonna come on the show today? Anthony Davis is coming back. He's returning from 4 to 6 weeks off. Well, you can't build a rhythm if you're constantly off. Not to mention, he doesn't take care of his body the way LeBron does. He doesn't take the offseason seriously as a guy of his caliber could. If Anthony Davis cared about the offseason, put in the grind that some of the best players in the league, like a Giannis, does, Anthony Davis is a top 3 player in the league because this should be his prime years. But you got to put in the work in order to ensure that you're able to do that. But I think LeBron is a Laker next season. And I think I was talking with a buddy of mine who's a Lakers fan. To me, this is the most important offseason in Lakers history, arguably. Because as Shaq said a month ago, you don't have LeBron, forget it. That's it. I mean, just in the last 2 games, a little, sample size, it hasn't looked so good. John says MVP. And he's got the deer, fear the deer, as they say in Milwaukee about their team. Phillips says, right now, I don't think you can debate who the best player in the NBA is. I mean, without Giannis, the Bucks would be irrelevant. And he just entered his prime. Absolutely. He's outstanding. And again, maybe he has entered his prime. I'm not even sure he has yet. Like they say prime years is about like 28, 29, in some cases, like if you're LeBron, 30. Takes care of his body. He's durable. Plays his tail off every single game. I'll tell you, it's scary for the rest of the league. My man Grady says, Giannis is clearly the best player in the world. KD has never been the best player in the world. He's always been the combo. LeBron hasn't been the best player since the Solomon Hill injury, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he hasn't quite been the same physically since that. Obviously, for those of you that are unaware, middle last season, it was a loose ball. Solomon Hill of the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know if he's still in Atlanta now. I think he's playing somewhere else. But he dives to go get the ball and ends up going into LeBron's foot. It's basically the same play that happened with Marcus Smart and Steph Curry. But he goes in LeBron's foot. He twists his ankle, and he lost all explosiveness he had for the rest of the year and did not look the same in the playoffs. And, as they say, Father Time's undefeated. It's having itself a heck of a fight with Tom Brady, but it's undefeated. Grady says he's just been very injury-plagued since then. Yes. I do think there was a stretch in 2016 where Steph clearly was the best player in the world. Yeah, and I've always said statistically, I mean, not to transition this conversation to a Steph Curry one, but I've always said statistically, I mean, when you look at the numbers, they're ridiculous what Steph put up in that 73-win Warriors season. Statistically, that's his most impressive season, and I will agree with you. Up until that finals, I thought he was the best player in the world, and then LeBron, gave me nightmares in games 5, 6, and 7 that I really don't want to talk about. But last year, I thought was Steph's most impressive season. Okay, his second best player, and I love Wiggins, but his second best player is Andrew Wiggins. He's getting double teamed basically every trip down the floor, and he leads the league in scoring. And wins in a 72 game season, so it's condensed because of the pandemic. The Warriors won 39 games, and they were like 1-8 without Steph. Shows you how important he was. Gray says, but LeBron, yeah, exactly. LeBron took that mantle back when he won the 2016 finals. Stretch in 2015-16 where Steph was the best player in the world. And then he says, AD is Amari Stoudemire 2.0. He could be like Joel Embiid if he took care of himself. Guy went from being injury played out of shape to one of the best bigs in NBA history. But you can't take that away. You can't take away the fact that AD is a champion and is one of the great NBA power forwards. Yeah, he obviously he's one of the the best power forwards to ever play the game without a question. I think the issue with AD is again, is the commitment there? Like that's the major question. Does AD care enough about being one of the best players in basketball, which clearly we've seen over the course of his career to this point he's capable of doing? We'll see. I mean, and that's definitely going to be reflected in what the Lakers do this offseason. I mean, he's hurt last year. He's hurt this year. And again, I'm going to talk about AD later in the show, but it's not looking good for the Lakers and for Anthony Davis. I feel like he's really missing an opportunity here to capitalize on his prime years. I mean, this is the stage in AD's career where he should just be taking people's heads off. I mean, he should be in the MVP discussion, but the commitment's not there. It's a shame. But he always has been injury prone as well. But I think the lack of offseason commitment does play factor. Let's move on to the NFL for just a second here. Actually, let's see. We got one more comment. Philip asks, do you think Giannis is a top 3 power forward ever so far? Okay, so the greatest power forward ever is Tim Duncan. Ooh, gosh, that's a tough one. I mean, look. So he's got a championship. He's got a finals MVP. He's got 2 regular season MVPs. He's got a defensive player of the year. Back to the regular season MVPs, he could get a third, which, I mean, the list of players that have done that is short. I mean, we're talking Magic, Larry, LeBron, Michael, Wilt, Bill Russell. I think Moses Malone only won 2. He won back-to-back. I don't think he ever won a third. Kareem has won 3 or more. And that's so, I've never thought about that. He probably is a top 3 power forward ever. And again, he's only 27. I keep reiterating, he's only 27. He's only getting better. That's the scary part. But yeah, he's definitely not Tim Duncan. Yeah, he's not there yet. He doesn't have the body of work that Tim Duncan has. Could he get there? Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it. And especially if he wins an MVP this year, which I think he should, and if he goes on to lead the Bucks to a title, which my preseason prediction was Warriors Bucks in the finals and that the Warriors would win in 7. But if regardless, Bucks get to the finals, they win it. Giannis plays great, wins another Finals MVP. Man, that is rare air. Dang, Grady's got an idea. He says, "Would you be shocked if Ben Simmons doesn't play this season and then just retires in the offseason?" I'd be pretty shocked if he retired. Yeah, we're talking about guys like Anthony Davis who don't have the commitment. Ben Simmons is I would put over AD. AD's issue has been injuries. Ben Simmons is just, you're not even sure the guy half cares out there on the floor. But I don't think he's going to retire. I would be genuinely shocked if he retires. But would I be shocked if we don't see him in a Nets uniform this season? No, of course not. I didn't think he would get to this point once he got traded. But and I keep asking the question, how did he injure his back? Because regardless, it's bad for Ben Simmons. Because A, is he that injury prone? Or B, what I think is the more likely option, he's tight. His back's tight. He hasn't been playing a lot of basketball. He hasn't played an NBA game since June of last year. Okay, so you look at that. You look at the fact that, again, he hasn't played in so long. So once he gets traded to Brooklyn, it ramps up basketball activities. and then strains his back, what does that tell you? Hasn't been in shape, hasn't been stretching. One thing I'll give Kyrie Irving, I've been very critical of Kyrie Irving throughout this whole season, but one thing I will give Kyrie, when he came back, once the Nets were like, okay, fine, we'll let you play road games, Kyrie was ready. He was physically ready to go. He wasn't sitting around and doing nothing. That's one thing I'll give Kyrie over Ben Simmons. He clearly cared enough about the game of basketball to have his body physically ready, physically in shape, and ready to go play basketball. I can't see Ben Simmons retiring. That would be pretty shocking. Could he retire in the next 3 to 4 years? Maybe even. I even think that those chances are extremely slim, but you never know. But let's shift to the NFL real quick. I'm telling you, did the Rams get like a different salary cap than the other 31 teams? Like, are they using like Major League Baseball rules where there's no salary cap? Because it doesn't happen very often that the Super Bowl champion is just as good the next season. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were, because they win the Super Bowl in 2020, and what do they famously do? They bring back all 22 starters for last season. Of course, they ended up coming up short to the Rams, but people are like, that is rare. That never happens. The Rams won up Tampa. They said, not only are we going to be just as good the next season, we're going to get better. Because now, of course, we got our core guys. We got, Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, the three most important players of a team without a doubt. Okay, we lose Von Miller, but we still have Leonard Floyd, who over long stretches of the season was more productive than Von Miller. What you needed from Von Miller, what the Rams traded for in Von Miller, they got what they wanted, right? A timely sack on third down, getting pressure on the quarterback, forcing him to throw it a half second earlier than he really wanted to, or just getting a big sack in big key situations. That's what Von Miller did for them. But over the course of a game, Leonard Floyd is going to be more productive than Von Miller at this stage. That's why I wasn't a huge fan of the Bills giving Von a 6-year deal. That's a long time for the pass rusher, but hey, I'm rooting for Von. Great dude, great player, and going to a championship organization in Buffalo. But the point with the Rams is this. You got your key guys, Stafford, Donald, Kupp. Oh, yeah, we're going to add Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson is going to be our number 2 receiver, a guy who has been crazy productive with nothing at quarterback. We're talking Blake Bortles. We're talking Mitch Trubisky. We're talking a young rookie Justin Fields with an offensive staff that seems to be against Justin Fields getting him the ball. He has never had anybody close to the level of Matthew Stafford getting him the ball. So he's your number 2. You trade Robert Woods. And I really like Robert Woods as underrated receiver as there is in the league. But Allen Robinson is a more productive player. He's a better player currently than Robert Woods. Robert Woods is also coming off an injury. Oh, yeah. We're going to sign Bobby Wagner. One of the 3 best players at his position in football. Add him to a defense that already has Aaron Donald, who's the best. He's clearly the best defensive player in the league. He might be the best player in the league. And also a defense that has one of the top 5 corners in football in Jalen Ramsey. That's what we're going to do. And here's what the Rams, I've always been a fan of how the Rams have done business. I have so much respect for the owner, Stan Kroenke, and for the GM, Les Snead, and obviously Sean McVay is one of the 2 best offensive coaches in the league with Andy Reid. The one thing I will give the Rams a lot of credit on, and I feel like this hasn't been discussed enough, because in the NFL, it's different than the NBA and Major League Baseball. Small market teams can be just as successful. Or at least more. That's the more specific term. More small market teams in the NFL can be just as successful as the big market teams. I mean, crap, look at the Jets and Giants. They're a mess, for years. The Chargers, up and down. You don't know what you're getting from them any given Sunday. You have no clue, right? So with the Rams, what I will give them is this. They are capitalizing off of the fact that, hey, we're the Super Bowl champs. Okay, so we're already popular. We're in Los Angeles. That's the entertainment capital of the world. but we're also leaning on the fact that we've got a multi-billion-dollar stadium. We've got, if I'm not mistaken, Stan Kroenke may be the richest owner in the league. I could be incorrect on that, but he's certainly up there. I mean, you got to be pretty rich to build a stadium like SoFi, clearly. But they're capitalizing on the fact that they're being able to take advantage of the fact that they are a big market and that they do have a rich owner. Dallas, you watching? That's the thing the Cowboys struggle with. That's the thing that at times, obviously, you got the Giants and the Jets really struggle with. Miami at times. Now, Miami's had a pretty good free agency, but I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want to go down to Miami? In December, it's 75, 80 degrees. Yeah, but the organization's a wreck. That's one thing I'll give the Rams is teams want to go to Los Angeles and play, but they don't want to go to a train wreck. Well, obviously they're not going to that. They're going to a team that just won the Super Bowl, that has a top 10 quarterback, best defensive player on earth, one of the best corners in the world. Now you have Bobby Wagner in this mix. Come on. Like it's ridiculous. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. So I will reiterate what I said about the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think there's ever been a path more clear for a team to go back-to-back since the last NFL team went back-to-back, won 2 straight Super Bowls. Obviously, that was the Patriots, that winning in 2003 and 2004. Because we all know in sports, not just the NFL, but in sports, it's incredibly difficult to win 2 straight championships, 2 straight years. And so for the Rams, I mean, you've got like 3 obstacles. Tampa, the 49ers in your own division, and maybe Green Bay. Although I'm not high at all on Green Bay this season. You lost Devontae Adams. You've lost a number of key pieces. Marquez Valdes-Scantling's gone. Just so your quarterback can make $50 million? Dallas isn't going to contend with those teams. Dallas did not get better in this offseason. So for the Rams, okay, beat the team in our division, San Francisco. Beat Tampa Bay. Oh, by the way, we just did that on the road in a hostile environment. We blew a 27-3 lead, but we kept our composure and we won. We learned from that. Don't give up big leads, especially to Tom Brady. That's the last dude you want to give up big lead to. Grady asks, he's a Patriots fan, how good can the Pats be next year if Mac Jones takes the next step and becomes a, say, Derek Carr level quarterback? I don't think he can be a Derek Carr level quarterback because one thing that Derek Carr has that Mac does not, Derek Carr is underrated in his mobility in the pocket. He moves extremely well. He can get, he's not your typical, running quarterback per se, like your Kyler Murray's or your, Lamar Jackson's, or even Trevor Lawrence can run around a little bit. Derek Carr is not that kind of guy, but he moves extremely well in the pocket, and he's got a way better arm than Mac Jones. Now Mac is more accurate, but keep in mind, again, his yards per attempt is way down the list. So can Mac take the next step? Sure. But what I would also argue is this: this is another reason I didn't like the Mac Jones to New England fit at all last season in the draft. Who's he throwing to? I mean, it's, and by the way, his defense got worse because the Patriots just let J.C. Jackson go. They got rid of Shaq Mason, sent him to Tampa. So in an AFC, like with all these elite quarterbacks, in the AFC West, all 4 quarterbacks are better than Mac Jones. You look at obviously Joe Burrow, and I mean, I would say every quarterback in the AFC North outside of Mitch Trubisky, and even that's a discussion, is better than Mac Jones. Okay, Deshaun's better, Lamar's better, and Burrow's better. Josh Allen in his own division is a better quarterback. Matt Ryan, I think, is better. We saw the Colts are better than New England. Grady says, I worry about Belichick. I think success has perhaps blinded him a bit in regards to valuing talent. Hope that I'm wrong. Yeah, I think we're starting to see that. Let me get to this second comment. I'll get back to your Belichick point. Grady says, getting 48-year-old Terrell Owens and he'll be just fine. Yes, I saw Terrell Owens is playing in some football league that Johnny Manziel is playing in, which, I mean, T.O. at 48 physically looks like he could still play in the league. I doubt he could take the punishment, being closer to 50 than 40. But, honestly, I'm not even I'm not even the slightest bit joking when I'm saying this. How many receivers in New England are better than T.O.? I'm serious. Who they have? Are we really going to rely on the guys they have on that roster? Kendrick Bourne, really? Kendrick Bourne's probably better than T.O., but that's about it. That's a thin receiving unit. But back to your point about Belichick, I think you hit the nail on the head, Grady, because with Bill, you see the fact that, okay, we had the success early on when Tom wasn't Tom Brady. He was just the game manager, right? But the NFL's changed. You got to have a superstar quarterback in order to succeed. You got to have elite weapons in order to succeed. You got to playmakers on defense, which the Patriots have had for, the majority of the last, really since Belichick's been there. But you just let J.C. Jackson walk. J.C. Jackson's one of the best corners in football. You just let him walk. You can't do that. I think they let Kyle Van Noy go. Kyle Van Noy's a pretty productive player. Matthew Judon's really your best defensive player now, and he faded off. The McCourties are getting older. So I'm not high in New England at all this season. And listen, I'll throw this out there. You heard what Bob Kraft said at the NFL meetings, or I think it was it the owners' meetings? They were interviewing Bob Kraft, and he said, it's unacceptable that we haven't won a playoff game these last 3 years. Just throwing that out there. 2019, obviously, they lose the playoff game to Tennessee. That ends up being Tom Brady's last game in New England. 2020, they go 7-9, miss the playoffs. And then this year, they make the playoffs, but get blown out by 30 to your division rival, who has a generational talent at the quarterback position. So I'm not high in New England at all. Grady, back to the T.O. point. He says the Cowboys should bring in T.O. to sell tickets. That'd be a great idea. At this point, it seems like that's all the Cowboys care about is selling tickets. Because of the Cowboys, just because there's the star, they're automatically going to sell tickets. It's the Lakers and Yankees syndrome. But honestly, I'd take T.O. over AB. Obviously, AB's better than T.O. Today, clearly. But I'm not even joking. I'd take T.O. over AB. Please, Jerry, please don't sign AB. Of course, Jerry's got bigger things to worry about right now that we will not get into today. Let's move on for just a second to Baker Mayfield. I haven't talked Baker this week, so let's finish the week talking about the about to be former Browns quarterback. So Chris Collinsworth, who is the not the play-by-play man, the lead analyst for NBC Sunday Night Football. And great his job. Love Collinsworth. But he wrote a piece on Pro Football Focus talking about how the Seahawks will be a good fit for Baker Mayfield. And that's, the Seahawks, I said a couple weeks ago, the Seahawks and the Panthers are like the only teams where getting Baker Mayfield would be a clear upgrade. There are other teams where it'd be an upgrade, but you don't want to take the baggage with Baker. The shots at teammates and shots at medical staff and how he behaves with coaches and things of that nature. I said only the Seahawks and the Panthers are where it would be, okay, clearly you would take him over the guy you had. Baker's clearly better than Drew Lock, okay? Baker is clearly better than Sam Darnold. But, and then you hear about the Panthers. That's not going to happen because he and the Panthers have mutual disinterest. It's like, I've never heard of that before. Why has Baker, his camp, got to put that out? But no, it would be a disaster in Seattle if Baker goes there. Russell Wilson, who's a top 5 quarterback in the league, in my view, he misses a few games and he comes back and they go 7-9 or 7-10. DK Metcalf's your best wide receiver. DK's a really talented player, but it feels like we talk more about DK's physical appearance and how well built that he is than him making plays on the football field. Tyler Lockett's a good speed guy, but he's getting up there in age. Who's your tight end? Like Will Disley or something? Your offensive line is a disaster. It's awful. There's a reason Russ, which, we can argue about whether that was the right move or not for Russ to say this, but there's a reason that when Russ was, expressing his frustrations with the Seattle Seahawks, that the offensive line was kind of at the top of the list. Like, hey guys, I could use a little extra time to throw here, And then the defense, which, look at the numbers. has gotten worse and worse and worse every year for the last 5 seasons. And that's supposed to be Pete Carroll's specialty. He's a defensive coach, and his defense just gets worse and worse and worse. And they try to add guys. They've added Jamal Adams. They've added Carlos Dunlap. Or was it Carlos Dunlap or somebody else? I'm blanking. It was the other guy for the Bengals. No, it was Carlos Dunlap. But they've added defensive players. It's not worked at all. I mean, even that Diggs guy they have is good, but he didn't affect their defense to the point of making him even average. So Seattle is a mess. And listen, so Baker's going to go to Seattle and succeed. Right, so he's going to play well going against Matt Stafford twice a year and Kyler Murray twice a year and Trey Lance, who I love and nobody else does, twice a year. And even if Trey Lance doesn't pan out the way I think he will, he's still got Kyle Shanahan. Okay, Kyle Shanahan with Jimmy Garoppolo doing next to nothing got the 49ers to the NFC Championship game because you have the playmakers like Debo, Kittle, so on and so forth, the offense, and then defensively, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. I mean, just monsters on that 49ers defense. So, no, Baker to Seattle would be a disaster. It would be awful. I mean, even going to the NFC, which would be better for Baker because the AFC is just stacked with elite quarterbacks, at least more so than the NFC is. But, I mean, what's there to do for Seattle? Because even if you want a bridge quarterback, I mean, why not just go out there and get why don't you just go out there and get a Teddy Bridgewater or something? Teddy Bridgewater is probably not as good as Baker Mayfield. It probably isn't as talented as Baker. There's a reason Baker was taken number 1 overall. But he doesn't come with the drama and the excuses and the just the nonsense that Baker does. I mean, with Baker, folks, it was something every week. 2018, he had a great rookie season. 2019, you could say, well, he had a bad head coach. Yeah, Freddie Kitchens an awful head coach. But she still had a loaded roster. And I'm not expecting the Browns to be contenders even with that roster because it was a Super Bowl roster with a bad coach. But here's where Baker messed up. A, threw 21 picks. That's not going to cut it. B, he came in out of shape and was overweight the entire season. Okay, so he comes in 2020. He has a successful season. Well, yeah, because he had a great running game. Again, I've reiterated this over and over and over. It feels like nobody is addressing this, especially Baker supporters. Nobody's addressing this. Look at Baker's best throws from the 2020 season and tell me how many of those were off of the play action. Because the defense has got to respect Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt with that offensive line that they had. And then in 2021, it was a disaster. It was awful. So you're telling me Baker, there's nobody who's watched a season of football would say, yeah, the Seahawks are better than the Browns in terms of in terms of their roster and their talent. No, absolutely not. So, no, that would be a horrible fit in Seattle. Let's see. Grady says, guess who's a free agent next offseason? Just saying, reunion possible. I'm not 1,000% sure what your... Well, of course, yeah, you could say, I guess Tom Brady's a free agent next year, so... But no, Tom's not coming back to New England. I'm sorry, Grady. He's not going back. He even had the quote last year, I wouldn't be caught dead in the winter back up in Massachusetts. And then he says, you don't think Baker could make some noise with Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett, and DK? With the NFC getting weaker, that team might sneak into the playoffs. Don't think they will, but Seattle with Baker Mayfield will be a 7-9 team in my opinion. So Seattle would have a 4th place schedule, which would help. So they'll be playing the worst team out of last year's divisions, I like Tyler Lockett more than I like DK Metcalf because I don't think DK Metcalf's the number 1 receiver. I think Russell Wilson turned him into a number 1 receiver. He turned Doug Baldwin into a number 1 receiver for a time there. And then you look at Tyler Lockett, who's a speed guy, but once you start to get older and lose your speed, what are you? And so, but the tight ends clearly are not as good as Cleveland. You're not going to have anybody in Seattle that's as good as Austin Hooper or David Njoku. Okay, so you have that. The offensive line is a massive. I mean, we're talking top 3 offensive line to bottom 5 offensive line. And Baker struggled with as good as an O-line as there is in football. So how's he going to do with basically nothing up front? Russell Wilson struggled with that offensive line. So I can't imagine Baker would succeed with it. Also, he had an offensive head coach in Cleveland. He had Kevin Stefanski. He had a great running game. And you brought up Chris Carson, but Chris Carson's never healthy. I think he's a really good running back, but he's always hurt. And so, something else too to note: Baker's gonna be playing from behind a lot. Now I know that because Russell had to play from behind a lot because the defense gets off to a bad start, doesn't come out ready. Offensive line struggling to run block and to pass block or pass protect for Russell, and that led to a lot of Seattle Seahawks blowout losses last year. Same thing with if Baker would come in there. So I can't see even 7-9 seems like a reach. Even 7-9 seems like a reach. Let me see. Let me Google who their opponents are next season. We can be totally objective about this. And again, the schedule hasn't come out yet. So it does matter, obviously, when you play them and injuries happen and that. Let's see. Seattle Seahawks 2022 opponents. Where are they? There they are. Okay, so at home, the 3 division opponents, Arizona, Rams, Niners, of course, and same case the road, they'll play those 3 teams. At home, they got Atlanta. They could beat Atlanta. Carolina. Carolina's got a loaded team. They're not beating Denver. That'll be Russell Wilson's return to Seattle. Can you imagine that? The Raiders, they can't beat the Raiders. Jets, maybe. Giants, And then on the road, they've got at the Saints, at the Bucks, at the Chiefs, Chargers, Lions. So let's see. Let's objectively say how many games of those they could win. So let's say, look, we always have like a shocking win or two in the division. And the thing about Seattle, obviously, they know the 3 teams in their division. So let's give them a win over Arizona. Let's say they beat the Cardinals. Doesn't matter home road. Let's just say they beat the Cardinals. I just cannot envision them beating either the Niners or the Rams. So let's give them a win over Atlanta at home. So that's 2 wins because Atlanta's going to be one of the worst teams in the league next year. Carolina. Now that's a toss-up because the thing for Carolina is Baker's better than Sam Darnold, but both throw awful interceptions, and at least Sam Darnold, maybe will have Christian McCaffrey, right? He's got DJ Moore, who's an underrated player, and a really good defense. Like Carolina's had when Sam Darnold wasn't putting them in awful positions last year, that defense led by Shaq Thompson was really, really good. There was a time there that they were the number 1 defense in the league. So I would probably give a win to Carolina there. Denver, they're not beating Denver. Let's say they win over the Jets. Giants is a tough one. Okay, fine. I'll be nice. I'll give them a win over the 2 New York teams, Jets, Giants. So they beat them. They beat both of those teams. And then on the road, Saints, I can't see them winning in that road environment. They're definitely not beating Tampa Bay or Kansas City. That's 2 losses. The Chargers, maybe the Chargers gag and do what they tend to do. And I'll give Seattle a win over Detroit. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a 5-6 win team to me. I don't know why I can't see, even with Baker, any optimism that there would be for Seattle. I mean, even with Cleveland. And Cleveland did not have the injury bug last year for the most part. I mean, they stayed relatively healthy last season, especially, for an extra game, 17-game season. And it didn't work at all twice in the last 3 years. So I can imagine if Baker's going to turn his career around, Seattle's not the place that I think it would happen. And so now that all these teams have their franchise quarterback now, even if they don't have their franchise guy, their clear starter for this season, Baker's options are limited. And who knows, he very well may have to go the Mitch Trubisky route and be a backup for a year and sort of try to rebuild his reputation. And if he is a backup, depending on who he starts behind, he very well could get some opportunities next year, just depending on who he signs with. Moving now back to the NBA. I love talking NFL. By the way, real quick, last point about the NFL. Was that not the craziest March in NFL history? Like, come on. Like, it was insane. The free agency, the trades, the quarterback movement. I mean, at the last second, at the 11th hour, Bruce Arians retires and Todd Bowles becomes the new Bucks head coach. I mean, it was nuts. And then, by the way, for the NFL, guess what we have in about 4 weeks? We got the NFL draft, ladies and gentlemen. About, I guess, 4 weeks from yesterday is the NFL draft. So can't wait for that. Probably have some good stuff for the draft coming in the future, so you might want to stay tuned for that. But let's move to the NBA now for a second. The Lakers play the New Orleans Pelicans tonight in what is a pretty big game. I mean, every game, like I mentioned, for the Lakers is big from here to try and stay afloat in that play-in tournament. But this one especially because of the fact that they're hanging on for dear life. They're just out of the play-in tournament. They're tied with San Antonio with the same record, and the Spurs have the tiebreaker. And so the Lakers and the Spurs play tonight. They play tonight and they play Portland. And they play them at home. So I'm going to take the Spurs to win that game tonight. I would imagine they play Portland again on Sunday. So this is a massive, massive game for the Lakers because they're playing the Pelicans. They're 2 games back of the Pelicans. Maybe there's an outside chance that they could host that 9-10 playing game, but they still got to jump San Antonio. And if they want a shot to host that 9-10 playing game, they got to beat New Orleans. All right, got it? Okay. So Anthony Davis is reportedly, according to Shams Charania, like I said, with my April Fool's joke in the show, the one part that isn't an April Fool's joke is that Shams Charania is, along with Woj, the best source, that there is out there. And he reported yesterday that Anthony Davis, barring any setbacks, will play tonight against the Pelicans. By the way, that game is tonight at it's in Los Angeles at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific time. So it's a late one. And the Lakers, by the way, are 1-point favorites, which I think is fairly interesting. The Lakers, I think, are going to win this game tonight, but this return does nothing for LA. Because here's what I think is going to happen for the Lakers. You want me to give you a prediction for what I think happens? Here's what I think happens. So the Lakers have 5 games left in their season. Pelicans, Nuggets. I'm sorry, 6 games left. My bad. Pelicans, Nuggets, Suns, Warriors, Thunder, Nuggets again. Now, when I look at the schedule, I'll give them a win tonight at home over the Pelicans. And no, I can't take them to beat Denver. They're dang sure not beating Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix has nothing to play for, and you can't tell. I mean, Phoenix has clinched the number 1 seed like a week ago. Like, they've clinched home court playoffs, home court advantage throughout the playoffs. So their postseason standing has already been determined, and they're still playing their tails off. Chris Paul did his thing against my Warriors the other night. DeAndre Ayton had a big impact as well. I mean, Phoenix is just playing at the top of their game right now. So I do not see the Lakers going to Phoenix and winning that. So, and then they go to Golden State. Now, Steph Curry will not be available for that game because, as I briefly mentioned earlier, Steph is out for the rest of the regular season. But I'm still going to give a win for my Warriors there because, again, my Warriors did almost beat the Suns on Wednesday night, and they have had some close games despite Steph's absence. Lakers will beat the Thunder. And I say they will beat the Nuggets. So that's 3-3. And if you're a Lakers fan, you cross your fingers that that's enough to get you in the play-in. My guess is that it will. Because when I look at the Spurs schedule the rest of the way, if I could just pull it up here. When I look at the Spurs schedule, so I'll give them 2 wins over Portland. But they got 4 brutal games the rest of the season. At Denver, at Minnesota. They got a home game, but it's against my Warriors at Dallas. Now, all of those teams that I mentioned, the last 4 teams I mentioned, still have their seeding to be determined in the playoffs. Like the Timberwolves are trying to avoid the play-in. The Nuggets are trying to avoid the play-in. The Warriors are trying to avoid being the 4 seed. And the Mavericks are trying to hold the Warriors off for the 3 seed. So this is going to be some tough sledding for San Antonio. I would argue tougher than for the Lakers. So I'm going to bet that the Lakers get in the play-in tournament as the 10 seed, face the Pelicans on the road. And I think they're going to beat New Orleans in the play-in. Because I'm like, look, okay, 1 game, who do I like more? LeBron or whoever the best player for the Pelicans is? Is it Brandon Ingram? Is it CJ McCollum? I'd say it's Brandon Ingram, but I trust LeBron over Brandon Ingram. Do I trust AD? Not in the slightest. Do I trust Russ? Please. But I trust LeBron to win 1 game. But I believe they'll lose the next game, whoever the loser of the 7-8 play-in game is. I think it will be the Clippers. So I see the Clippers, the way they've been playing recently, especially once Paul George has come back, he's looked excellent. And we know what he's removed the playoff P, the pandemic P label away from him. So he's playing out of his mind right now since coming back from injury. So I think the Lakers get in the play-in tournament. They go 3-3, beat the Spurs out. The Spurs go 2-4. Lakers go 3-3. Lakers get in the play-in, beat the Pelicans, and then barely miss out in the playoffs, losing to the Clippers. Hold me to it. Hold me to it, because I think that's going to be the case. Grady is already looking at the offseason. That's probably the smart way to look at it, because the Lakers aren't going anywhere. Any idea who you can realistically get Anthony Davis for who you can realistically get for Anthony Davis if you trade him? I feel like you could pull off Bradley Beal, or maybe get the Knicks to move off Randle, Barrett, and a couple of their guys. Okay, let's start with your Bradley Beal. So they trade him to Washington. Now, maybe they do a 3-team trade, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's a trade between the Lakers and the Wizards. The thing about the Wizards is this, because I've heard the discussion, well, you could trade AD for Damian Lillard. Now, I would try it if I were the Lakers, but I don't think the Blazers are going to do it. Blazers are a well-run franchise, and with Chauncey Billups, they're trying to build a new identity, a new culture, and frankly put, AD does not fit that culture. And so Washington, they don't have a culture. Okay, they've got Wes Unseld Jr., I believe, is their head coach. They got a nice squad. Washington's always gonna be nice. There's not been that many years where Washington has just flat out sucked. And so Anthony Davis comes in, he makes them better. AD's better than Bradley Beal. And so but I do think Bradley Beal would be a good fit with LeBron. Not as good as Damian, but if you get Bradley Beal, a 30-point per game scorer, yeah, you'll take that. For the Knicks, I would argue the same thing. Come on, the Knicks don't have a culture. Are you kidding me? I like Tom Thibodeau, but last year was kind of a one-hit wonder if we've seen this season. The Knicks have been knocked out of the playoffs entirely. They've been knocked out of the play-in. So I don't think that's out of the question either. With the Knicks, if given the opportunity to get Anthony Davis, you don't think they would take him? I think so. Absolutely. It gives them a better shot to maybe make the playoffs, or at least make the play-in tournament. And like you said, possibly get Julius Randle, RJ Barrett. I don't think they give up both. I think they like RJ Barrett. He's shown some real flashes of being a solid player this season. Julius Randle, maybe. Obviously, Julius Randle was drafted by the Lakers back in, I guess it was 2015. No, I think it was 20. I think he was drafted in 2014. It was 2014, 2015, but he was drafted by the Lakers. Played there for a few years, got traded to the Pelicans, and then ended up in New York with the Knicks. I'm not sure if Julius Randle would be a great fit with LeBron and the Lakers. But I would honestly try to get RJ Barrett over Julius, but we'll see. Or maybe get Alec Burks. I like Alec Burks a lot. Grady says, I don't think they trade him, though. If you're the Lakers, what do you realistically think getting that is better than a healthy AD? Well, the thing is, you're probably not going to get a player that's better than a healthy AD. I mean, Damian Lillard is the only guy that you could make that argument, and obviously Dame's been out since December. So, that's the only guy you can make that case. We've seen what Damian Lillard can do when he's healthy, and especially in the playoffs, he's as good as it gets. So that's the only guy. But I think for the Lakers, it's not necessarily about getting a better player than AD, but it's about getting guys that fit with LeBron, and that are going to be there more frequently than AD, because AD is always down. That's what AD stands for. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. But sticking in the NBA, let's move to the 76ers for just a second, and then I'm going to predict the college basketball Final Four, which is tomorrow night. Can't wait. This could be an epic one. We got 4 college basketball blue bloods, and I think both games are going to be very interesting, especially the second one. But first, let me discuss the Philadelphia 76ers. So they lost last night. It was an inexplicable loss to the how many wins? The 21-win Detroit Pistons, who have the second worst record in the NBA. I mean, the Pistons are in a complete rebuild. I like the direction they're going, but they still got a ways to go, to say the very least. But Doc Rivers was talking after the game about the struggles of the Sixers the other night and how they were playing, and he said, quote, talking about he was asked about the team's offensive approach down the stretch. And Doc Rivers, the head coach, said, quote, I thought it was a tough game. I thought offensively we really just stood around. They were switching. We just played outside and didn't move the ball as a group. At halftime, we were shooting 42%, I think, and I just thought the fouls bailed us out. We were awful in the first half, too. We played with very little life tonight, didn't play together tonight at all. That's something we've been doing. It's just one of those nights, but a tough one. And then he was asked about he was asked about the production of his bench. And Doc Rivers said, quote, "Well, the bench didn't struggle. They didn't get a lot of shots in their defense. I think during that stretch, it was more James than them. So, yeah, it's just a tough night." It was just James, obviously referring to one James Harden. All I will say about this is I'm going to be very interested to see how this plays out. Because listen, we know James Harden's history. If he gets pissed with you, he wants to leave you. He got pissed with Houston, he wanted out. He got pissed with Brooklyn, he wanted out. How's this going to play over? Because James Harden does not exactly have a reputation of getting along with coaches. So, but here's the thing. Doc Rivers is right. James Harden was bad in the fourth quarter last night. You look at his numbers in the fourth quarter, or at least over the last 31 minutes of the basketball game, James Harden scored a grand total of 4 points, went 1 for 11 from the field, did not make a single three. He missed all 6 of his three-point shots in that stretch. That can't happen. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, even when the trade went down and everybody was freaking out, I said the Sixers got the better end of this trade because they got the better player. And because they're going to have more success in the regular season and arguably in the playoffs than the Nets will. But the thing with the Philadelphia 76ers is this. Their second best player, James Harden, does not have the intangibles necessary to help lead your team to a title. He doesn't. He has shown that time and time again. He's a little passive-aggressive. He doesn't have the leadership qualities. He's bad on the defensive end. He tends to, if it's not his shooting night, he just stops shooting the basketball late in playoff games. This is what you're going to get from James Harden in the playoffs. And I'm going to be really interested with Philadelphia more than any team in the Eastern Conference. Who do they draw in the first round? Who do they get? Because as it stands right now, try to pull up the standings. I believe Philadelphia right now is the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. They would play Chicago. That would be an interesting series because you saw what DeMar DeRozan did last night. Holy cow. 50 of them against the LA Clippers. Hit the free throws that tied the game, sent it to OT, and he had a huge dunk in OT, played unbelievable. It was a great game last night in Chicago. Chicago's a great defensive team, and now they have struggled against some of the best teams in the league, but that feels like a 7-game series to me. I might take Philadelphia, but after that, I'm out. Because in the second round, they'd either play Miami or possibly, Brooklyn, possibly Charlotte or somebody like that. It'd probably be Miami when it's all said and done, and I'm taking the Heat over the 76ers. Any day of the week. Any day of the week, I'm taking Miami. So, but I do not buy into the 76ers having any playoff success because of James Harden. We see what he does, or more specifically, doesn't bring to the table come playoff time. In Houston, actually, even back in OKC, remember how bad he was in that 2012 finals against the Heat? He was awful. Okay? So he struggled in the playoffs in OKC, struggled in Houston, struggled in Brooklyn. Why on earth would I think it'd be different in Philadelphia? The old Maya Angelou quote goes, if someone shows you who they are, believe them. James Harden, leading up to the playoffs, he's showing us who he is. You cannot lose to the Detroit Pistons last night. Now, Doc Rivers does deserve blame. Let's not forget the fact that Doc Rivers is the only coach in NBA history to blow three series in which his team had a 3-1 lead. He's the only coach that's ever done that. So Doc Rivers will play factor into the 76ers playoff collapse whenever it does happen. And with Joel Embiid, can he stay healthy in the playoffs? Couldn't last year when the Sixers were the number 1 seed. And I think part of that cost them against Atlanta, obviously, along with Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers. So this is why I haven't bought into Philadelphia all season long. I do not think this is going to work whatsoever. But moving on to college basketball, I got to get a drink of water for this because this is going to be fun. So it is the Final 4. This is what we look forward to all season, the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I got the upsets and this and that. I hate the upsets. Hate them. I want to see the best teams being the last team standing. And in this case, we absolutely have the best 4 teams standing in college basketball. We've got the Villanova Wildcats taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. And we've got the granddaddy of them all, the best rivalry in college basketball, one of the best rivalries in American sports, the North Carolina Tar Heels, the Duke Blue Devils, in what could be Coach K's last game. We know for a fact for Coach K that this will be his last weekend coaching in Division I. But let me give the predictions. I wasn't able to get the background music in time, so no background music, but I'll give a fairly quick prediction. For the first game, Villanova, Kansas. It's going to be played Saturday. Both games are Saturday night. First game is at a little after 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time on TBS. Kansas is a 4-point favorite in this game. Of course, neutral site there in New Orleans. It's at the Superdome, where the Saints play. So here's the thing about Kansas. I said this going into the tournament. I said this when I predicted them to win the tournament. I predicted Kansas to win it all. My bracket is awful. But my national champion is still alive. It is still alive. I had Kansas beating Baylor in the championship. Obviously, Baylor got knocked out by North Carolina in the second round. But the thing with Kansas, they are the best overall team in the tournament. Certainly left in the tournament, but all season long in this tournament, I just feel like what they could bring up both offensively and defensively, they do what all great teams do. Their defense fuels their offense. That's how it works. The best teams in college basketball, the best teams with any basketball with any basketball team at any level. If your defense fuels your offense, you could be a championship basketball team without a doubt. And Bill Self getting his team right back to the Final Four once again. I also look at the fact. Just think about they're down 6 at halftime in their Elite 8 game against Miami. They're down 6 at halftime. They win the game by 26 points. They scored 47 in the second half. Think about that. 40 in a college basketball game. In the Elite 8, 47 in the second half. That's what the Kansas Jayhawks did to the Miami Hurricanes in the Elite 8. On the other end, you look at Villanova. Now, Villanova is as well-coached a basketball team as there is in the nation. I think Jay Wright's one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in the country. He's as good as they come. Okay, but you look at the fact that you look at Justin Moore, who suffered that heartbreaking injury. He's out, I believe it's an Achilles injury. So this is going to go well past the tournament. This is going to be a long recovery for him. So we prayers up to him. We wish him the very best in his recovery. But that's a big loss for Villanova. You're talking about a guy who averages 15 points a game. And so I think for Villanova, look, there tends to be a trend in college basketball that the more beat up team in the Final Four almost always loses. And as well coached as Villanova is, there's only so many bodies that you can put out there over the course of a 40-minute game against a better team, which Kansas is a better team. So with that said, let's go and put in my prediction real quick. Let me move this bar. Let's put in my prediction real quick. I'm going to take Kansas to cover the spread 71-56. 71-56. And as the old saying goes during the NFL season,
we're a betting man.
We're a betting man. I'm taking Kansas 71-56. I still have them going the whole distance, winning the national championship. They win easily by 15, cover the spread easily. And as my segment goes during the NFL season, if I were a betting man, I would take Kansas to win this game and cover the 4-point spread. The second game, and this is the granddaddy of them all. This is what we've all been looking forward to. North Carolina, Duke, best rivalry in college basketball. One of the best rivalries in American team sports. Coach K, last run in the NCAA tournament. This is it. Regardless, win the championship, lose tomorrow night, or if he loses in the national championship, this is it for Coach K, the greatest basketball coach in the history of college basketball, men's or women's. The best who ever did it. And so, first of all, the information, the game will start a little bit before 9 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be around 8:50 Eastern, 5:50 Pacific time, again on TBS. Duke, like Kansas, is a 4-point favorite on a neutral site there in New Orleans. This is a fun one because you got, for North Carolina, they got some bucket getters. They got some dudes down low getting the rebounds. For Duke, Great guard play. They got a wing, Wendell Moore, who's going to be a first-round pick, not just a first-round pick, but probably a top 3 pick in the NBA draft this season, in a few months during this draft cycle. I think this is going to be your typical Duke North Carolina game. Okay, both teams are incredibly well coached. Both teams have excellent guard play. I would give North Carolina the advantage in terms of play from the big man because North Carolina gets a ton of offensive rebounds, and that killed Duke in their last loss. Ended up being Coach K's last game at Cameron Indoor. Offensive rebounds, three-point shooting, that's what ended the game for the Tar Heels in beating the Duke Blue Devils in Coach K's last game at Cameron Indoor. I think it's going to be a little bit more of the same. We're going to see great shooting by North Carolina. We're going to see great execution by Duke. It's going to come down to the wire. It's going to be a nail biter. But when it is all said and done, I'm going to take Duke. They will not cover the 4-point spread, but I've got them in a nail biter. 69-67. I think this game comes down to an offensive rebound for Duke. They hit a 3 to go up by 2, and then they get a stop to end the basketball game and advance to the national championship game for the first time since they won it all in 2015. So Duke wins over North Carolina by a final score of 69-67. Again, it is going to be your typical nail-biter, back and forth. No team builds a huge lead game, Duke, North Carolina. I can't wait. It is going to be a thrilling Final Four. My man Philip, who is a huge North Carolina fan, we've been going back and forth watching North Carolina play. It's been increasingly frustrating for him, understandably so, that some of these games, especially when they almost blew that big lead to Baylor. He says, I think Kansas will face UNC for the national championship. We will send Coach K to retirement, hopefully. Well, certainly North Carolina fans hope that they are feeling the same sense of satisfaction that they felt in that regular season finale. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Coach K's last game at the Cameron Indoor. But, I mean, listen, I'm not ruling it out. The way North Carolina's playing, especially the defensive end of the floor. And look, I will say today on the show what I said on Monday. Thank you, North Carolina. Thank you for beating St. Peter's. Thank you. Thank you. I did not want to see St. Peter's in the Final Four. No disrespect to those kids over there. And Coach Holloway, by the way, shout out to him. I think he took the Seton Hall job. Mad respect to those guys. I did not want to see St. Peter's in the Final Four. I wanted to see Duke and North Carolina in the Final Four. So thank you very much. And it will probably be the game of the year. It's kind of like how Baylor and Gonzaga last year, when they played in the Final Four, probably the best college basketball game I've ever seen, either that or the 2016 national championship game. 2 best college games I've ever seen. But, that was the game of the year. National championship was a blowout in favor of Baylor. I had Baylor winning that game. I did not see that coming. But I believe that if I were a betting man, as I said earlier, I'm taking Kansas to cover the spread, but I would take North Carolina +4 in this game. I think they lose the game outright, but I'd take North Carolina +4. That would be my prediction. I got a lot of North Carolina fans. Philip's one of them. John's a big North Carolina fan. My man P Star, who I do a lot of Instagram lives with, he's a big North Carolina fan. So yeah, I don't. Deep down, man, I do not want to have to send them the typical, I'm sorry text or DM or what have you. But I just got a feeling that this is feeling like a Cinderella story. This is feeling like a storybook ending for Coach Mike Krzyzewski. So with that said, what a weekend of sports we have. Hope everybody has a great weekend. That is all the time we have for today's show. Be sure to catch Carving It Up on Monday. We'll be back, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. You can also catch the Carving It Up podcast, as always, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts. On social media, see right down there on the YouTube stream, at Carving It Up Podcast on Instagram, at Carving It Up Pod on Twitter. On Facebook, search Bryson Carver, and the Carving Up logo should be right there. Look exactly the same as where it is everywhere else. Shout out once again to Ryan Flowers for designing that new logo. So, hope everybody has a great weekend. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. April Fool's jokes are killing me, man. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.